American Indians, they ended up losing their land during the colonialization. The Cinco de Mayo issue in Mexico has been a very tenuous type of an issue. Again, as we go through the historical perspective, the geopolitics of what was occurring during that particular time, you'll get a feeling why Cinco de Mayo in Mexico is relegated to a very minor national celebration. The major celebration of Cinco de Mayo, we will find out as we go through the history of Cinco de Mayo, is celebrated in Puebla. It is not necessarily celebrated in all of Mexico. 16 de Septiembre is the one that is celebrated again, and the major event, the independence of Mexico itself. As I indicated earlier, in the 1800s, you had countries that were colonializing the Latin American countries, the territories themselves. And in those days, of course, you had British that colonialized all sorts of countries. Spain had colonialized all sorts of countries, all sorts of areas. At one time had colonialized Mexico itself until they got thrown out in 1810. But in the 1860s, France started to exercise its power, wanting to be a moving factor. They wanted to colonialize area also themselves because, again, they were sort of late in the game, and they figured that it was their time to colonialize area. They found a real opportunity in Mexico because they had a relationship with Mexico. The British, the Spaniards, and France had loaned money to Mexico because Mexico needed money at the time that it was going through its revolution. So they knew that they had some power over Mexico at that particular time. And when in 1861, Benito Juarez, who was an Indian of Oaxaca, who had been voted in as the president of Mexico, when he had taken over, he told the countries that Mexico was in no financial ability to pay the foreign debts that were owed to these foreign countries. Now Spain and Britain did the right thing. What they did is they figured that Mexico was a good trading partner and had been a good trading partner. So they ended up getting some nice deals from Mexico regarding trade, and they abandoned the concept of going after the money that was owed to Mexico. France had a bigger idea. They were not so much concerned about the money that Mexico owed them or the trading agreement that they had with Mexico. They figured this was their opportunity now to colonialize Mexico. So that's the reason that they decided that they would use their French army in order to basically overthrow Benito Juarez's regime and take over Mexico. Now, they didn't think this out of the clear blue sky. It wasn't as if all of a sudden they said, wow, France has left, the British have left, the Spaniards have left, they cut a good deal, now we decided differently. They were approached actually by individuals that were not in favor of Benito Juarez's regime. Benito Juarez regime represented a more liberal view than what the conservative view was of Mexico. You have to remember that the Mexicans at that time, in 1810, when they overthrew France, the individuals that did it were not the mestizos and the Indians, the mixed race individuals that took over, that actually threw Spain out. It was more the conservative, the people that had the economic well-being in mind that overthrew France because they figured they could do better they could do better with Spain being out because the economy would be better for them. But once they saw that Benito Juarez was taking more of a liberal point of view regarding land reform and things of this nature, they decided that this was not what they wanted. They basically said, I think it was the good old days during the colonial days when we had Spain, we had a monarchy and so forth. I think that's going to be the best kind of a system that we can have in order for us to profit economically. So the conservatives actually supported the French. Matter of fact, they approached the French and they told the French, if you come, we will welcome you. We will set the stage up for you to start up another colony in Mexico. Then business will be as usual, economics will be as usual for us, and we'll all be better off. Well, unfortunately, for Spain, for France, and for the conservatives, the liberals were not of the same opinion. And basically, Benito Juarez attempted as much as possible to enter into negotiations with the French to give them similar deals that he had given Spain and Britain in order to have them leave Mexico, and basically so Mexico could continue to grow and go through its evolution that it had to go. Now this is really important because this is around the time of 1861. At the same time in 1861, we have an issue going on in the United States. In April of 1861, the Civil War began. And of course, this is the first time in history that a nation fights within itself. And those of you that are familiar with the Civil War, basically it was one of the deadliest wars that the U.S. has ever fought. You have to remember that the enemy combatants are Americans. Americans killing Americans. And so it was the issue of slavery, the issue of the North basically indicating that they wanted to abolish slavery, the issue of the South saying basically they needed slavery because of their economy. As the war started, it was a win-win situation. At least the French thought it was a win-win situation for them, because they had a Confederate state, Confederate nation in the U.S. which they wanted to set up an alliance with. You had the Mexican conservatives who were basically saying, we want you to come to Mexico, we want you to set up a colony here, we will support you. Again, the southern states saying, we need the French there because that will give us the economy that we need